The shuttle broke through the starfield like a silver arrow, gliding toward the ancient mass of metal that hung in the dark, the Galactic Council Station. It was older than Earth's space program, maybe older than Earth itself. Built by a race long gone, the station was now the center of interstellar politics. Deals were made here. Wars were ended, or sometimes started. Inside the shuttle, Captain William Carter stood silent near the viewport. He wasn't dressed like a diplomat. No flowing robes. No palistrus. Just his Earth military uniform, black with simple silver trim. It was clean but unassuming. Like him, a voice crackled over the shuttle's comms. Council station clearance granted. Prepare for docking. Carter gave a short nod to the pilot and turned to face his aide, a young, nervous man named Ellis. You ready for this, sir? Ellis asked, trying to sound confident. No, Carter said plainly, but we're doing it anyway. The shuttle docked with a quiet thud. The airlock hissed open, and a rush of filtered air swept in. Cold, sterile, the kind of air that hadn't touched a real planet in decades. They stepped out into the welcome hall, a huge chamber lined with banners from dozens of alien worlds. Tall beings with glowing eyes stood next to small, insect-like creatures. Voices buzzed in a dozen different languages. The atmosphere was thick with formality and distrust. Carter scanned the room. He didn't see smiles. He saw eyes calculating, measuring. Most looked at him the way one might look at an animal let loose in a meeting room. New, unpredictable, possibly dangerous. A thin, blue-skinned official approached. Welcome, Representative Carter of Earth, she said, bowing slightly. You may proceed to the diplomatic floor. Your quarters have been prepared. Carter nodded. Thanks. As they walked, Ellis whispered, Sir, we should review the protocols again. There are certain phrases we should avoid. Some species see eye contact as aggression. I'll handle it, Carter said, not slowing his pace. They entered the main chamber, a round room with a high ceiling and seats arranged in a spiral. At the center was a wide circular platform. That was where the speakers would stand. The council seats surrounded it like silent judges. The human delegation had been given a seat near the outer edge, close enough to hear, but far enough to remind them they were new here. Carter sat down. He didn't fidget. He didn't adjust his collar. He just watched. Moments later, the chamber doors opened with a low hum. A tall figure entered, flanked by two guards in dark armor. The being was tall, reptilian, and regal. His eyes were golden slits, and his posture was perfect. His voice echoed through the room without a mic. Ambassador Zarek of the Threx Dominion has arrived. Carter watched the others rise as Zarek passed. The Threx were old players in this game, dominant, proud, and dangerous. Zarek's gaze moved slowly over the crowd until it landed on Carter. He held the stare for a moment too long. Then came a small smile. Not friendly, not warm, calculating. When Zarek spoke, his voice was smooth as silk over broken glass. Humanity joins us at last. Let us hope their unique temperament brings balance, not fire. A few delegates chuckled softly. Carter stayed seated. He didn't respond. Just looked back at Zarek with the calm expression of someone who'd seen worse than alien politics. Zarek moved on, but the message was clear. You don't belong. The opening speeches began. They were long, full of polite words and careful warnings. Peace was the word everyone used, but Carter felt something else beneath it. Pressure, history, tension. He didn't understand all the languages, but he understood tone. These weren't friends gathering for peace. These were enemies sitting still just long enough to sharpen their knives. As the session ended, Ellis leaned closer. First day down, sir. Not too bad. Carter didn't answer right away. His eyes were still on Zarek, who now stood with a group of delegates, laughing softly. Finally, Carter said, This isn't a peace talk. This is a test. A test. To see what the new guy does when he's cornered. Ellis swallowed. And what do we do? Carter stood, adjusting his jacket slightly. We don't blink. He walked out of the chamber without looking back. Captain William Carter woke early, long before the artificial day cycle began aboard the Galactic Council Station. He sat alone in his quarters, sipping a mug of bitter black coffee he'd packed from Earth. It wasn't much, but it helped. The station air was too clean, the silence too thick. Outside the small window, the red star glowed faintly. Even light felt older out here. His room was simple, bare walls, a desk, a bed, and a screen showing news updates in translated alien languages. Most of the broadcasts were calm and diplomatic. But Carter knew better. Peace was a thin blanket over deep cracks. He dressed in uniform, strapped on a small wrist scanner, and stepped into the corridor. Ellis was waiting, half asleep, but alert enough to hand Carter a datapad. Today's schedule: 2 observation sessions, 1 briefing, and a meet and greet with the Narathi ambassador. Don't shake hands, he has spines. Got it, Carter said, already walking. Instead of heading to the council floor, he turned down a maintenance corridor. The smooth silver walls here were dull, the lights dimmer. This was the part of the station the diplomats rarely saw. Ellis blinked. Sir, this isn't the... I know. Just want to stretch my legs. A few turns later, they passed a tall, 6-limbed alien in a gray technician's uniform. The alien was short, bug-eyed, with soft clicking sounds coming from its throat as it checked a panel. Carter paused. You work on this level? The alien turned, clearly startled. Ah, yes. I am mech of level 9. You are. Earth 1. Captain Carter. Just taking a look around. Mech's antennae twitched. Very rare. Diplomats do not come here. That's probably a mistake, Carter said. You learn a lot in the places no one wants to see. Just then, the overhead lights flickered. Mech looked up, concerned. That is not normal. Ellis checked his wrist display. There's a small dip in power across decks 7 through 11. Systems running on backup for the last 10 minutes. Carter stepped closer to the nearest panel. The cover had been removed recently. Tools were still scattered nearby. You fixing something? Mech hesitated. Yes. A relay node failed this morning. Very old unit. Fail how? Carter asked. The alien fidgeted. Burned out. Happens sometimes, but this one was strange. Overloaded intentionally. I thought maybe error, but now I am unsure. Can you show me? Mech led them to a nearby maintenance shaft. Inside, a charred relay device hung from a panel, wires blackened. Carter leaned in and scanned it. This was hit with a feedback pulse, he muttered. Not a glitch. Someone fried it. Ellis frowned. But why? Just a communications relay. No such thing as just anything in a place like this, Carter replied. This relay was tied into the council floor systems. You're saying someone's sabotaging the station? I'm saying someone doesn't want clear communication when things go wrong. Mech lowered his voice. There have been other failures. Small things. I filed reports. No reply. Who's responsible for reviewing those? Zarek's security team. Carter exchanged a look with Ellis. Of course it was Zarek. Can you get me those reports? Carter asked. Mech nodded quickly. Yes, but you must not mention me. I only fix things. I do not want trouble. You'll stay invisible, Carter promised. Same as me. Back on the diplomatic floor, the next round of talks had begun. Carter entered late, slipping into his seat. Zarek was mid-sentence, speaking in calm, practiced tones. And while we welcome Earth's presence, we do hope they understand that diplomacy requires more than force. Subtle again. Always polite, always pointed. Carter gave no reaction. His eyes swept across the delegates. Some smiled politely. Others watched him carefully. He wasn't just a newcomer anymore. He was a threat. As the session ended, Ellis leaned close. Are you thinking sabotage, sir? I'm thinking setup. Carter stood slowly. They wanted peace talks, he said quietly. But I think someone wanted to spark. What? Carter's jaw tightened. So they can light a fire and say it wasn't their match. They left the chamber in silence. Far above them, buried in the maintenance logs of the council station, a dozen system errors blinked quietly on a screen no one was watching. Yet, the day started quiet, almost too quiet. Captain William Carter stood outside the viewing deck, looking down through reinforced glass at the inner rings of the Galactic Council station. Shuttles came and went. Drones zipped between platforms. Lights flickered across hundreds of corridors and domes. It looked peaceful from up here. But Carter had learned long ago that peace on the surface often meant something was stirring underneath. He tapped his wrist and brought up the maintenance reports Mech had forwarded. 12 small system failures over the last 2 weeks, all written off as routine wear or low priority. But the patterns said something else. They all pointed toward the communications and surveillance systems on floors tied to the council's central chamber. Someone's been poking holes in the walls, Carter muttered. Behind him, Ellis arrived holding 2 steaming mugs of Earth coffee. He offered one. You know, sir, Ellis said, maybe these glitches really are just age. This station is old. Yeah, but accidents don't hit only one set of systems over and over. Ellis sipped quietly. He didn't argue further. They returned to the Earth delegation's small office. The room was simple: metal walls, a round table, and 2 chairs. One wall displayed a live feed of the council floor, currently empty. A dull hum filled the air. Carter sat down and began going through the report logs again. Then the room shook. A sudden, sharp tremor passed through the floor, followed by a muffled boom somewhere below. The lights flickered. The hum changed pitch. Warning symbols flashed red on the screen. Emergency alert. Contained explosion. Section C, 12. No fatalities. Damage control en route. Carter and Ellis bolted out the door and down the corridor, passing confused diplomats and buzzing service drones. By the time they reached the security perimeter, armed guards had already sealed off the hallway. Zarek stood at the edge, his black robes flowing around him. His golden eyes narrowed as Carter approached. Captain Carter, he said smoothly, I trust your people are unharmed? Carter didn't answer the question. What happened? A minor explosion, Zarek replied. Contained. Fortunately, no loss of life. What was in the blast area? Zarek smiled. Your delegation's supply crates. Food, equipment, some cultural items, I believe. Carter stared at him. How convenient. Zarek's tone remained pleasant. Yes, quite. It seems your crates were mislabeled. An unfortunate mix-up. Station safety officers are reviewing the matter, of course. You're saying Earth brought explosives aboard the council station? I'm saying, Zarek said, stepping closer, that tensions are high, and the actions of every species are under great scrutiny. One careless mistake could shift opinion. The implication was clear. Behind them, Ellis whispered, Sir, the media feed's already showing footage of the fire. Some are suggesting sabotage. Carter turned back to Zarek. Do you really think anyone here believes that? Zarek didn't blink. Belief is not always required, Captain. Only enough doubt. He turned and walked away. Carter watched him go, fist clenched. Back in the office, the damage report came in. The explosion had destroyed 3 Earth cargo containers, including communications gear and a backup power unit. No traces of explosive materials were found, only signs of deliberate overheating of a power cell, possibly triggered remotely. Ellis dropped into a chair, stunned. They're framing us. If word spreads, Earth could be suspended from the talks, or worse. Carter paced the room, thinking. First, we need to trace the power logs, he said. Find out who accessed that section in the last 48 hours. Cross-check every identity. Ellis nodded and began pulling station access records. Carter stopped by the wall screen. News feeds were already updating. An alien voice spoke over translated captions. Council authorities investigating Earth-linked cargo explosion. Unclear whether this was internal sabotage or a diplomatic error. He stared at the words. The match had been lit. Now, someone wanted to blame the smoke on humanity. Give me Mech, Carter said firmly. Tell him to meet us off-grid. We're done sitting at the table. As Ellis sent the message, Carter looked at the glow of the red star outside. So this was it. Not a meeting, not a peace summit, a stage, and someone had chosen Earth to play the villain. Captain William Carter moved through the underbelly of the Galactic Council station with careful steps and sharp eyes. Gone were the bright corridors filled with diplomats and advisors. Here, in the lower levels, the walls were darker, narrower. Pipes lined the ceilings. The hum of machines and recycled air echoed through empty halls. This was where the Real station lived, where systems breathed and broke, far from the polished chambers above. Beside him, Ellis followed closely, carrying a small scanner device. Ahead, in the shadows near a service hatch, Mech waited. The insect-like engineer twitched nervously as Carter approached. "You came alone?" Mech asked in a low tone. "Just us," Carter said. "What do you have?" Mech opened a compartment on the wall and pulled out a cracked datapad. Access logs from the power systems tied to Section C-12. I copied them before the records were sealed. Carter took the pad and scrolled through lines of coded entries. Dozens of systems engineers, janitors, and security officers had logged entry over the past week. But one set of entries stood out, 3 back-to-back access points, all logged under different IDs, but from the same terminal. Same time. He pointed to the entries. Fake credentials. Mech nodded. Yes, all from a terminal used by Threx Dominion personnel. Zarek, Ellis said quietly. Or someone working for him, Carter replied. And these logs, they were hidden? Yes, Mech said. Not deleted, just moved out of standard view. If I hadn't been looking for system errors, I would have missed them. Carter gave him a firm nod. You've done good work. Mech hesitated. You'll keep my name out of this. You helped prevent something worse. You'll be protected. Carter turned and started back through the corridor. His thoughts raced. The explosion wasn't just about Earth. It was a test, a move in a game of manipulation. Someone wanted the humans out of the picture, or better yet, branded as aggressors before real talks began. Back in the delegation quarters, Carter spread the data across the main screen. Ellis worked at a terminal, overlaying access logs with station blueprints. This pattern shows a clear loop, Ellis said. They entered the service tunnels 2 hours before the explosion, disabled surveillance, triggered the overload, and then slipped out. Clean. Too clean, Carter muttered. They knew exactly where to go. A moment later, a message alert appeared on the screen. Council session. Emergency debate requested by Threx Dominion. Topic: Earth stability and role in the summit. Carter narrowed his eyes. They're making their move. Ellis looked up. Sir, we should forward this evidence to the council. Let them see the logs, expose the lie. Carter shook his head. Not yet. Ellis blinked. Why not? Isn't this what we were looking for? They won't believe it coming from us. Not with the smoke still rising from the blast site. We need to confront Zarek in front of everyone. Make the truth impossible to ignore. You mean ambush him? I mean outplay him, Carter said. He's counting on fear and confusion. Let's give him clarity. They spent the next hour assembling the report. Verifiable, time-stamped, simple. No assumptions, just facts. Then Carter made one more call, quietly, to the station's old AI subroutine, hidden beneath layers of abandoned code. The AI had no name. It called itself Unit Echo. I need access to live audio feeds during the session, Carter said. Unauthorized. Echo replied in a cold mechanical voice. Diplomatic floor is protected by council encryption. Not asking for permission, Carter replied. Just results. There was silence then. Patch enabled. Floor feed will record from hidden node in seat 19. Carter closed the channel. Later, the council chamber was full. Delegates from 25 systems took their seats. The ceiling above them pulsed with faint light as the station adjusted to a new day cycle. News drones hovered silently at the edges, capturing every movement. Zarek stood in the center circle, arms outstretched in a posture of calm. The Threx Dominion expresses deep concern, he began. Our fellow delegates, we welcomed Earth's participation with open arms. Yet within 2 days, explosions shake the station. Security systems fail. Accusations fly. Is this the mark of a species ready for diplomacy or for disruption? He paced slowly as murmurs spread through the crowd. Carter rose from his seat. May I respond? He said. Zarek paused, then gestured. Of course, Captain Carter. Please, speak. Carter walked into the circle, calm and quiet. No notes. No teatriques. I respect this council. I respect the stakes. So let me speak plainly. He tapped a device on his wrist. The chamber lights dimmed, and a projection appeared overhead. The forged access logs, marked with matching timestamps, side by side with the terminal ID, Threx origin. This is what caused the blast. Not Earth's cargo. Not an accident. A deliberate overload triggered remotely, using falsified credentials. The room shifted. Delegates sat forward. Zarek stayed still, eyes narrow. Carter continued. We traced the source. We verified the data. And we recorded a conversation, yesterday, one of Zarek's own aides speaking freely about the operation. Carter activated the next audio feed. The humans will panic. Their own systems will betray them. Let them burn themselves out, and the council will beg for Threk's control again. The voice was filtered but clear. The chamber fell silent. Zarek's calm broke. His face hardened. That recording is illegal. No unauthorized surveillance is permitted on council floors. And sabotage is... Carter shot back. You tried to start a fire and blame the smoke on us. But we saw your hand on the match. Some delegates gasped. Others murmured in their native tongues. Carter didn't look away from Zarek. We came here for peace, he said. But we won't be used. He stepped back. Now let the council decide what kind of diplomacy it really wants. The chamber was still. No voices. No movement. The kind of silence that fell after a weapon had been fired. Not one of steel or energy, but of truth. Captain William Carter stood tall in the center of the council floor, his last words hanging heavy in the air. Let the council decide what kind of diplomacy it really wants. Across the circle, Ambassador Zarek didn't flinch, but his poise had cracked. The smug calm he wore like a mask was thinning now, slipping at the edges. His long hands curled slightly at his sides. His golden eyes narrowed. The audio had played clearly. The voice of one of his own aides, admitting everything. Plans to frame Earth. Manipulate the council. Restore Threk's dominance through deception, not war. The plan had been smart, careful, but not careful enough. Now everyone had heard it. Zarek stepped forward slowly, voice smooth but louder now. This is outrageous, he said. A recording taken without consent, without authentication. It could be fabricated. Carter didn't reply. He simply turned to the central holo display. A second feed began to play. This one of visual, security footage, accessed through back-channel AI networks. It showed Zarek's aide entering the restricted maintenance tunnels 3 hours before the explosion. Then a data signature match, confirming the same identity used in the fake terminal logs. Fake is a hard sell when the evidence is stacked this high, Carter said. The delegates began murmuring. Some spoke in their native languages, voices sharp and clipped. A few looked at Zarek with suspicion. Others leaned toward their aides, whispering. From the far end of the room, Counselor Veln of the Raskari Confederation, a tall, four-eyed creature with a face like carved stone, rose to speak. We have tolerated Threk's pressure for years, Veln said. You have always spoken of peace while preparing for control. Perhaps Earth is new to our ways, but maybe that's what we need. Zarek's voice tightened. The humans do not understand balance. They threaten it. Carter stepped back into the circle, calm and sure. You want balance? He said. You try to throw the scales and call it stability. You wanted peace, your way. But that's not diplomacy. That's dominance. He paused, letting the words settle. Then added, humans aren't perfect. We've made our mistakes. But when we give our word, we don't hide a knife behind it. A few delegates nodded. The chamber's mood had shifted. Zarek's composure broke fully now. He pointed a clawed finger at Carter. You come here pretending to represent order, but you bring chaos. You don't belong at this table. Carter looked him in the eye. We didn't come to sit quietly, he said. We came to stand when others won't. The counselor chair called for silence. Her voice echoed across the room, smooth and firm. We will review the evidence. Until then, the Threk's dominion is suspended from further negotiation discussions. This council will not tolerate covert aggression from any delegation, no matter their legacy. Zarek stood frozen for a second longer, then turned without another word. His guards followed, silent shadows behind him. Carter returned to his seat. Ellis sat beside him, wide-eyed. You just stared down one of the most powerful figures in the galaxy. No, Carter said quietly. I stared down a liar who thought no one would call him out. Ellis glanced at the hollow feeds, updating with news headlines. Threk's scheme exposed. Human diplomacy turns the tide. New power emerges in council. Earth refuses to bend. Zarek leaves chamber in disgrace. Sir, Ellis said, leaning closer. That was risky. Could have gone either way. Yeah, Carter replied. But sometimes diplomacy isn't about keeping things calm. It's about knowing when to break the silence. He stood as the council session ended, delegates filing out with different expressions, some impressed, some cautious, all changed. In a station that had seen centuries of power games, deception, and quiet threats, something new had entered the room. A human, and not just any human. A human who didn't play by the old rules. The news of the council's decision spread fast. By the time Captain William Carter returned to the Earth delegation office, the entire galactic station was buzzing with whispers, rumors, and cautious congratulations. The corridors were no longer filled with skeptical stares. They were filled with silent curiosity. The humans had changed something. Carter stood at the window again, watching shuttles drift past the red star. It pulsed softly like a heartbeat in the distance. He didn't feel victory. He felt the weight of a storm that had passed, but not completely cleared. Ellis entered with a tablet, eyes wide with updates. "Sir, it's everywhere. Half the news channels are quoting you directly. We didn't come to sit quietly. We came to stand when others won't. It's turning into a slogan." Carter didn't smile. "Let's hope it doesn't turn into a target." Ellis looked uncertain. "Do you think we've made enemies?" "We've always had enemies," Carter said. "Now, they just know our name." The council chambers were closed for the day. The delegates were in private talks now, digesting the shift in power. Without the Threx Dominion pushing behind the scenes, many species were reassessing their positions. The balance had changed. Earth, once an observer, was now a player. The door buzzed. A visitor. Ellis checked the screen. Ambassador Veln of the Rascary Confederation. Carter nodded. "Let him in." Veln stepped through the doorway with a quiet grace. His 4 eyes studied Carter carefully. "Captain Carter," he said, "you disrupted tradition. That's not easy in this place." "I didn't come here to be quiet," Carter replied. "I came to protect my people." Veln nodded once. "Then allow me to say, your methods, though unorthodox, exposed a deep flaw in our system. For too long we've allowed diplomacy to mean inaction. You reminded us that peace without truth is just delay." Carter appreciated the honesty. "So what now?" "We talk," Veln said simply. "Openly. As equals." It was a small statement, but from a senior delegate, it meant everything. After Veln left, Ellis let out a breath. "Did that just happen?" "It did," Carter said. That night, Carter walked alone through the quiet maintenance corridors again. Not because he needed to check anything, but because he needed to think. Peace talks were never really about peace. They were about power, about who sat, who stood, and who stayed silent. He thought of Mech, still working quietly in the lower levels, doing more to protect the station than most diplomats ever would. He thought of the audio recording, the risk he took activating the surveillance feed. And he thought of Zarek, who had believed humans could be manipulated just like every other young species before them. But humans weren't predictable. They didn't bow when threatened. They questioned rules, pushed boundaries. They solved problems, sometimes with words, sometimes with action. Back in the delegation room, Carter sat down and reviewed the latest messages. A few were warnings, veiled threats from lesser factions still loyal to the Threx. But more were invitations. Species that had never spoken to Earth now wanted to talk. Some offered trade. Others suggested alliances. A few just wanted to know more. Ellis entered again, this time with a tired but relieved expression. "We've been invited to the next round of core negotiations," he said. This time, not as observers, as contributors. Carter leaned back in his chair, finally allowing himself a small nod. "We didn't come here to make friends," he said, "but maybe we just earned some respect." The station lights dimmed as the cycle shifted to night. Outside, the red star flickered like an ember, quiet for now. Peace, for the moment, had returned. But everyone on the council knew it had returned on new terms. And one man from Earth had rewritten those terms with nothing more than a voice, a file, and the will to stand. The Galactic Council station felt different now. Not louder, not busier, but still in a way that hinted at change. The quiet carried weight, like everyone was listening just a bit closer, watching with more care. Rumors moved faster. Conversations leaned toward whispers. And in every corner of every floor, there was one name now being spoken with unexpected respect. Captain William Carter. He stood at the station's edge, on one of the private observation decks reserved for departing delegates. Outside, the red star still burned, casting long shadows across the metal floor. Earth's diplomatic shuttle waited nearby, its sleek silver hull flashing under the station lights. It was time to go. Behind him, Ellis approached slowly, holding a thin datapad. "Final reports done," Ellis said. "Summary of events, evidence logs, and all council responses. I've already sent a copy to Earth Command. Any word from them?" "Just one message," Ellis said with a faint smile. "They said, 'Next time, bring a suit.'" Carter let out a soft chuckle. Ellis stood beside him, quiet for a moment, then asked, "Do you think this is over?" Carter's eyes stayed on the stars. "No, not even close." The station might have been calm again, but beneath the surface, new tensions were forming. The threats Dominion wouldn't forget. Others would try to test Earth next, see how far this new voice could carry. But Earth had been heard. Carter turned from the window and walked slowly toward the shuttle ramp. Along the way, a few other delegates nodded to him, silent gestures of acknowledgement. They weren't allies yet, but they weren't skeptics anymore either. As he neared the shuttle door, a soft mechanical buzz sounded in his earpiece. "Unit Echo active. Final log recording enabled," the station's forgotten AI whispered. "Would you like me to continue monitoring diplomatic channels?" "No, Carter Blaive. Shut it down. We made our point." "Understood. Farewell, Captain." The shuttle doors opened with a hiss, revealing clean white panels, dark seats, and the gentle hum of Earth engineering. Carter stepped inside and took a seat by the window. Ellis followed, buckling into the chair beside him. The shuttle lifted off slowly, pulling away from the station. The giant structure faded into the distance, the red star behind it like a fading ember in a cold fire. Carter leaned back, arms crossed. Ellis turned to him, curious. "Sir, when you walked into that council chamber, did you actually have a plan?" "No," Carter said. "Just a backbone and the truth." Ellis laughed. "That's it. That's usually enough," Carter replied. They sat in silence for a while, Earth growing slowly larger on the screen in front of them. Ellis spoke again, quieter now. "Back on the first day, when Zarek said we didn't belong at the table, what were you thinking?" Carter looked out the window. "I was thinking," he said, "if you won't make room for us, we'll bring our own chair." Ellis smiled. Outside, space stretched wide, cold, and full of possibilities. The galaxy was watching now, and humanity, once ignored, now had a place, not because they followed the rules, but because they had shown a new way to lead. Direct, honest, unafraid. It wasn't the kind of diplomacy the Council expected. It was the human kind,